There are times when you find yourself in the house of a crumbling promise. Broken tiles, ruined doorways, and busted windows. It may be hard to dream a different future from such a place. It may feel foolish to proclaim your architectural imaginings when you still sleep where the rain seeps in, a bedroom with no ceiling. Prophecies proclaimed may feel like lies, said through teeth, filled with longings for bones to believe in. But what can broken houses teach us about broken hearts? And what does the snail say about the moment between shells? There are many ways to leave what no longer shelters you. Sometimes you wait, sometimes you must stay still, captivated by the water that drips through cracks in old ways of being, captivated by the light of distant stars. Sometimes you are compelled by a knowing that you can be grown again. You can almost picture it, your spiral doorway, the blueprint flows out of you. And sometimes you must go exposed. You must be the soft body pressed to the earth, unsure, yet unwilling to carry the heavy pieces of your last year's best intentions. Now, I wrote this poem 5 months after my ex-husband and I decided to get a divorce. I had scheduled a dissertation writing retreat in the desert, committed to finishing the dissertation. And that retreat became long, tearful walks alone in the hillsides, late nights looking up apartments online, calling surprise friends, telling them what happened, and I got less than 5 pages written. Now, a minister and a mentor offered to go to look at new apartments with me. I had a tight budget, which is not helpful in Los Angeles. And the first place we visited was hosted by the most warm and caring person, but was ultimately this small converted space in a backyard, still half functioning as their paint containment space, with just enough space for a couch and a swamp cooler for $1,300 a month. And in my desperation, I almost said yes, but the mentor intervened. "You can live with me," she said. So I did. They had just developed a cottage on their property, intended for their family, but not in use just yet, and I could live there for 1 year. And it was bright blue with white trim, and she was a gardener, so there were tomatoes, porch swings, lots of cats. I was home. So I officially moved into what I called the divorce cottage. It's the place you are very grateful to land in, but you cannot stay there. And it's the place you can stay in only because you know you're still going. And I'm sure many of you know of these places. There are divorce sofas, divorce garages, hotels, divorce studios, divorce Harley-Davidsons, divorce bikes, divorce RVs, divorce tents, divorce RE memberships. So these are the places we go between shells. No longer where we were or who we were, but not yet clear where we're headed, not yet where we want to be. And nothing can be done about it. Nothing can be rushed. You have to be shell-less for a while. And of course, that leads you somewhere, which led me somewhere, which led me here, which leads me to now Oakland, California, where I live and I work in another cottage with yellow trim this time, but this time with a new husband and a baby and landmates. So when we look back on any of our histories, of course it feels inevitable now that I should have done that. Of course that happened, so that could happen, so that could happen. Of course I went through that marriage and that mentor accompanied me and then they intervened and then they said yes. And of course there was an empty cottage And of course there was another path. But it is not quite so in the moment, is it? It is horribly uncertain and built entirely on our risks. The kind of waiting that is full of agitation, where brief moments feel like instability, and you sit, like I did in the darkness of the divorce cottage, marveling at what it feels like to watch your life actively crumble around you and to not move, but to watch. So the task then, I was learning then, is that we will not finally arrive anywhere. We must learn to be the one who is always arriving, surprised at what we find. And this brings us to the path of finding a center, but not just any old center, a center that's worth finding. And a center worth finding has something to do with this image of the little shellless snail. It might seem at first glance that the center is the spiral home that holds it, protects it, maintains it, the center of our external lives or beliefs or presentations about who we are and who we are not, the things we once liked or we once believed in with all of our hearts. Like getting that tattoo you got that you thought for sure would always mean something to you, but becomes beloved, like a postcard from a center, not the center itself. So no, my center was not my previous home or my previous marriage, nor is it the home I'm in now, nor the marriage I'm in now. It's not a divorce cottage with its tormented creativity. It's something else. Perhaps it is like the center of the earth. When we imagine the center of the earth, our public school minds might imagine that all too familiar map, a gorgeously round globe, sliced into like a pie, revealing 3 neat segments, perfectly layered like cake. The inner and outer cores glowing from the center of it, followed by linear layers of mantle and crust, and the earth presents itself to our middle school imaginations as neatly defined and stable and permanent. The center is the center. And yet we know better. A beautiful article from the BBC recently was titled, "The Earth's core is funkier than we thought." It is dynamic, it grows each year, surprise, because of earthquakes. And it might be nickel iron alloy, it might be star plasma, it might be crystalline in structure, it even rotates at a speed different than the rest of the Earth. And in the most recent discovery, which makes it funkier than ever, there is now proof that the inner core not only rotates at a different speed, but that possibly every 6 years it changes direction. So this whole place is in flux, changing its mind and everything, and it always has been the very source of our biological, biochemical belonging. The principle of our being is motion. So Earth has something to say to us unshelled snails looking for a center. It says the path of finding one is funkier than you thought. It is not the path of final arrival. It's not the path of a center that remains unchanged after all these years. Rather, it's a posture, a practice of arriving to meet that horizon, spinning towards us, even when the horizon spinning changes direction. Now, during my time in the divorce cottage, I read a lot of poetry. And I came upon the work of Stanley Kunitz, a poet who was 95 years old when they received the award as poet laureate. He was fascinated with his life and death and what it means to write poetry at the end of your life. And he wrote a poem in his 70s after having awoken from a terrifying dream in which a voice speaks to him from a cloud saying, "Live in the layers, not in the litter." These two lines became the basis of his poem, The Layers, which he leaves behind many lives, imagining them as abandoned campsites with the fires still going as scavenger angels fly overhead. And he talks about a principle of being from which through each life he has not strayed and struggles not to stray. And yet his word choice is useful to us because it is the principle in his being. It's in the posture itself. The principle is not how to be, but it's at the center of it. So the center is the posture. The center is our building and leaving campsites and the circles we make around campfires with memories of molten lava beneath our feet. And the center is the willingness to meet the horizon ahead and then be at the mercy of the world as part and parcel of the world changing. It is to realize that every place we stay, at its heart, is a divorce cottage. It is only our longing for permanence that leads us to believe, temporarily, that it's forever. I cherish the image of the elder who knows when they are at the end of their lives. And I have been in the presence of elders who go into the next horizon without clinging to shells. I'm sure you've been with them too. There is a freedom in their being that invites you to live that way now. And I have been lucky to be at bedside of those oriented to the horizon, fully centered, their blueprint pouring out of them. And may we be lucky to be so centered. These are the words from Stanley, the poem, The Layers. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was. Though some principle of being abides from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to, before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon and the slow fires trailing from my abandoned campsites, over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is now scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to feasts of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, sting my face, and yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. And in my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. And though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. May it be so.